And brother, let me tell you, in this day and age, we don't need more weak men. When your internal battles come to the point that you need help because they have weakened you, then get help. But I think everybody's balance is different. And I fear there was a problem for years on this side, but I fear, just like everything else, with that subject being pushed the way it is, we're going to get out of balance on the other side. And it's like, and everybody needs therapy for everything.
Well, I think you could think about it as a consequence, in some sense, of the lack of a concept of original sin, oddly enough. I mean, people bear an existential burden, you know. It's an intrinsic part of life to, I suppose, to feel guilty in relationship to nature and to feel guilty in relationship to culture. You know, it's difficult for us to live in harmony with the natural world, and for the natural world to live in harmony with us, by the way. And none of us are all we could be on the social front. And one of the consequences, and so we have that sense intrinsically, you know, that there's a lack in us that needs to be redressed. And unfortunately, that can be weaponized.
A situation is the same no matter how you encounter it. That's an objectivist perspective. It's no, a situation is radically different depending on how you encounter it. Kicking and screaming is very different than voluntarily, even if the stressor is the same. And there doesn't seem to be any particular limit to that, which is why, of course, all the heroic quest archetypal narratives are voluntary confrontation with truly terrible things. Otherwise, the quest has no real deep significance.
It's where the stress leads you that you need to avoid. You need to prevent the stress from being strong enough to make you avoid adversity in the first place. If you start to feel stress about adversity, I think diving right into it is like the secret for growth.
If your definition of success is win or lose, giving everything you've got and growing or learning along the way, then you're setting yourself up for success.
You know, my life is very revolved around competing in Olympias. When I go through adversity now, I'm like, this could be a part of my speech, you know? I tore my lat last year. I'm like, when I win this Olympia and I stand up on stage and I tell people I tore my lat in the middle of this prep, they're gonna be like, oh my God. And it's gonna make this story that much cooler. You know, and it's gonna push me beyond to the levels of which I know that I'm capable of accomplishing. It's gonna show me that when something feels impossible, it's not until it's not. You know, I got to keep pushing through and figuring it out. And so the stress is okay to feel in adversity. It's where the stress leads you that you need to avoid. You need to prevent the stress from being strong enough to make you avoid adversity in the first place.
You know the zebra story. I'll just tell it for people who might not have heard it. So zebras in principle are camouflaged, but it's kind of a weird idea because they live on the veldt and they're black and white striped and you can seriously see a zebra. So the question is, what's the camouflage? And the answer seems to be that it's against the herd camouflage because there's no single zebras, there's herds of zebras. And so when the zebras are milling about together in a herd, because the black and white stripes are edges, if you look away and then you look again, you can't tell what zebra you were looking at. Now, the reason that's relevant is because lions can't organize themselves to hunt a zebra unless they can identify one. Okay, so you don't want to be an identifiable zebra. So biologists discovered this because they were studying zebras and trying to figure out how to watch a given zebra so they could figure out what it was up to, but they'd lose track. So they would either clip their ears with a plastic clip or put a dab of paint on their haunches. And as soon as they did that, the lions killed them. The lions could mark out the zebra and organize their hunt, and then that was a dead zebra. And you know, you hear that in the natural world that lions often cull the herd and they take the weak and the unfit. It's like, no, they take the identifiable zebra. And the instinct of many, many people is do not be the identifiable prey animal.
Stop analyzing, stop criticizing both yourself and others, and go fail at some shit. Go give someone a good job for sucking at something because at least they're trying. Maybe it will even give yourself permission to do the same. We find meaning in trying difficult things, not just in succeeding at them.
And I think the point that you were making earlier, I think it's worth hitting on again, which is just that like most people's definition of work is a negative one, which is why they abhor it, which is also why they misunderstand so many people who quote, I'll say quote here, are successful or ahead of them or whatever, is that both people, one person says the word work and the other person hears the word pain. And so the first step to like becoming more successful is understanding the language that the people who are successful are using. They're actually defining the word differently. And so whatever that thing is that you actually enjoy doing, where you lose track of time when you're in it, even if it's challenging, but usually it is challenging, right? Like it's not easy because then it's boring, right? Which is also why the uncertainty thing is so key, right? To not knowing if it's gonna work or not. You are gonna work though, either way. Is that the people who are, quote, addicted to work make it easy to be addicted to work because they do things worth doing.
Why do I need to do that? What is the purpose? Not why for me, but why do I need to do that to make myself the man I need to be for those around me? Why do I need to say, you know what, I need to spend more time in the backyard with a cigar? Why do I need to do that? And if the answer is because I'm becoming overwhelmed, overtight, losing my balance, losing my focus on what really matters in life, I'm becoming hard to live with to those that I care the most about, to those who I am the most responsible for. So the why is, this will make me a better person for those around me. Me being able to bench press 200 pounds as opposed to 180 pounds does not necessarily make me a better person for those that I'm here to serve. It feeds my ego. So maybe a little more time in the gym doesn't answer the why, and a little more time in the backyard with my kids, that gives me a better answer to the why do I need to make this choice as opposed to that choice.
It's bad enough when someone else gets in your way, but when you get in your way, it's like, well, how do you?
It's far worse.
Definitely. You know, it's also useful to know too that, I think this is extremely useful, is that you have to deeply understand that no risk is, first of all, not desirable. You actually don't want a risk for your life. You want the risks you voluntarily take, and maybe you want high stakes risks you voluntarily take. But even more fundamentally, there is no risk pathway. You're screwed no matter what you do. And that's terrible, but it's also freeing. And so once you know that there's no safety, well, then you can take the most interesting risk.
Checking in with yourself and not treating your first response as always the correct one. I think the immediate sort of reflex that we often have, especially as young men, young and men, is an issue because that you haven't accumulated enough experience for you to be able to call it gut instinct wisdom.
Right.
What it is probably your default response, which is from childhood, from the group that you grew up in. Maybe it's dad's pattern, maybe it's mum's pattern, maybe it's the teacher and the way that you had to protect yourself in school. It's unlikely that that is the best way for you to deal with things. So I think, don't believe everything you think.
Yeah.
The speakers in this video have delivered a profound insight. Meaning isn't found in avoiding failure, but in facing it head on. From celebrating effort over perfection to recognizing that no path is risk-free, they challenge us to stop holding ourselves back. Adversity, as they show, isn't just something to endure. It's the very force that shapes us. So give yourself and others permission to try, even imperfectly. Work on what truly matters for those who matter. By embracing uncertainty and aiming higher, you can turn struggle into a story worth telling. Why not start now?